Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Jayam Vishnu Papa Mahamsa Parivrajacharya Rashtra Tarashata Shishinada Bhai Chanana Vindabhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Swami Bhati Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnu Papa Mahamsa Parivrajacharya Rashtra Tarashata Shishinada Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Sri Guru Parambara Ki Nantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Nitai Gaura Pramanandi Shri Kodnatai Mai Pushashi Ki Jai, Shri Tosnath Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Giridhara Ki Jai, Shri Nasimha Bhagwan Ki Jai. Christmas to the Shri Bhakti. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Preaching to America, Part 2, Los Angeles, July 22nd, 1975. More than 3 weeks had passed since Prabhupada had given the order for the BBT to produce 17 books in 2 months. Now Rameshwara and Radhavallabha reported that work was going on around the clock in all departments and that devotees were determined to meet their deadlines. Most press workers attended Mangalarti at 4:30 a.m., chanted their prescribed rounds of japa and worked all day until late at night, sometimes taking only one meal. Additional editors, painters, photographers, indexers, typists, proofreaders and layout men had been called in from other ISKCON departments. Everyone was cooperating to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desire. It was as though nothing else existed except the task before them. King Sports Press, one of the largest printers in the country, had taken the job of printing, agreeing to push back all other assignments to free their presses and bindery for work 24 hours a day until all 17 volumes were printed. A paper company in New York had agreed to supply paper at affordable terms to meet all the deadlines. The BBT's top photographer was in India photographing places of Chaitanya Leela, especially in Bengal and Orissa. Srila Prabhupada freely gave his time to the artists and the Bengali editors, answering their questions. Several times a day, his disciples would come to him about the exact use of Sanskrit and Bengali words. This was not merely a matter of lingual scholarship, since each word had to be translated in light of the previous Acharya's explanations and Prabhupada's own Krishna conscious realization. Prabhupada had cautioned disciple editors not to change, but to ask. The artists had their usual questions about how things should look according to Srila Prabhupada's transcendental vision. In their desire to have the paintings completely accurate, they were greedy to ask him almost endless questions. Prabhupada had said the transcendental paintings of his disciples were windows to the spiritual world. The artists didn't want their imaginations to obscure the view. Srila Prabhupada ki. There's one lecture actually I listened to recently where Gopi Parandana Prabhu, who was working also on printing, publishing the Srimad Bhagavatams, he was saying that there's no devotees will have that opportunity ever again to be involved in the ecstasy of printing and publishing Srila Prabhupada's books for the first time. So it'll never happen again. So that you can say that you get as much ecstasy from distributing them or being involved in teaching them or whatever he said, but it'll never happen again. It was like a unique privilege to be part of that. He said it may happen again, like many generations in the future when perhaps. Anyway, he couldn't think of any way in which it could happen again, actually. And so it's, at least we can read about it in this biography, and can try and understand how, by having complete faith in the order of the spiritual master, and then we can work together in this spirit and become empowered by that energy that comes from working together to fulfill the desire of the spiritual master. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 6, the activities of Lord Rishabhadev, text 16. I'll just read the Sanskrit myself because it's a prose verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Itihasma Sakala Veda Loka Deva Brahmanagavam Paramaguru Bhagavata Rishabhakyasya Vishudacharitam Iritam Pungsam Samasta Tushcharita Viharanam Paramamaha Mangalayanam Idam Anushvadayo Pachitaya Anusrinot Yashravayati Vavahito Bhagavati Tasmin Vasudeva Ekantato Bhakti Anayo Api Samanavatate. Please repeat. Iti, thus, Asma, indeed, Sakala, all, Veda, of knowledge, Loka, of people in general, Deva, of the demigods, Brahmana, of the Brahmanas, Gavam, of the cows, Parama, the Supreme, Guru, Master, Bhagavata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishabha Akyasya, whose name was Lord Rishabhadev, Vishuddha, pure, Acharitam, activities, Iritam, now explained, Pungsam, of every living entity, Samasta, all, Duscharita, sinful activities, Abhiharanam, destroying, Parama, foremost, Maha, great, Mangala, of auspiciousness, Ayanam, the shelter, Idam, this, Anushradaya, with faith, Upachitaya, increasing, Anushrinoti, hears from the authority, Ashravayati, speaks to others, Va, or, Avahita, being attentive, Bhagavati, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Tasmin, unto him, Vasudeve, to Lord Vasudev, Lord Krishna, Eka Antata, unflinching, Bhakti, devotion, Anayo, of both groups, the listeners and the speakers, Api, certainly, Samanuvatate, factually begins. Translation. Shukadev Goswami continued, Lord Rishabhadev is the master of all Vedic knowledge, human beings, demigods, cows, and Brahmins. I've already explained his pure transcendental activities, which will vanquish the sinful activities of all living entities. This narration of Lord Rishabhadev's pastimes is the reservoir of all auspicious things. Whoever attentively hears or speaks of them, following in the footsteps of the acharyas, will certainly attain unalloyed devotional service at the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please repeat. Shukadev Goswami continued. Lord Rishabhadev is the master of all Vedic knowledge.
Lord Rishabhadev is the master of all Vedic knowledge.
Human beings, demigods,
demigods,
cows and Brahmins.
cows and Brahmins.
I have already explained his pure, transcendental activities, which will vanquish the sinful activities of all living entities. This narration of Lord Rishabhadev's pastimes is the reservoir of all auspicious things. Whoever attentively hears or speaks of them, following in the footsteps of the acharyas, will certainly attain unalloyed devotional service at the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The teachings of Lord Rishabhadev are for the people of all yugas, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and especially Kali Yuga. These instructions are so powerful that even in this age of Kali, one can attain perfection simply by explaining the instructions, following in the footsteps of the acharyas, or listening to the instructions with great attention. If one does so, one can attain the platform of pure devotional service to Lord Vasudeva. The pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees are recorded in the Srimad Bhagavatam, so that those who recite these pastimes and listen to them will become purified. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. As a matter of principle, devotees should read, speak, and hear Srimad Bhagavatam persistently, 24 hours daily if possible. That is the recommendation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kirtaniya Sada Hari. One should either chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or read Srimad Bhagavatam, and thereby try to understand the characteristics and instructions of the Supreme Lord, who appeared as Lord Rishabhadev, Lord Kapila, and Lord Krishna. In this way, one can become fully aware of the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one who knows the transcendental nature of the Lord's birth and activities attains liberation from material bondage and returns to Godhead. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Chaitanya Manu Vaishnava Sthapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam, Andeham Shri Guru, Shri Yuta Padakamalam, Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shra, Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashakan Vitam Shra, Anchikapatarubyascha Kripasundabhyavicha Harichanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sadigaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada actually took this verse very seriously himself, because of all of the verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam that we have recordings of Srila Prabhupada giving lectures on. The verses of the instructions of Lord Rishabhadev to his sons in the beginning of the previous chapter are the verses which Srila Prabhupada gave class on the most from Srimad Bhagavatam. So they're obviously very special. And in this purport, Srila Prabhupada says that we should try to understand the characteristics and instructions of the Supreme Lord, who appeared as Lord Rishabdev, Lord Kapila, and Lord Krishna. In this way, one can become fully aware of the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, this is Srila Prabhupada didn't just jump to the 10th canto. He gave long purports in all 9 cantos, and especially here is mentioning Lord Kapila and Lord Rishabhadev. So the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev to his mother Devahuti cover a large range of topics, including a description of how the material modes of nature are governing all of the interactions of the material elements, talking about the creation of the universe, and also talking about pure devotional service, and also talking about the the dark side of the material nature and how the living entities are very much entangled in repeated birth and death. These instructions are very important. And also the teachings of Lord Rishabdev, which very much stress the futility of engaging in material sense gratification, the madness of doing so. And so these are very important. And Srila Prabhupada also says here that one should either chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or read Srimad Bhagavatam 24 hours a day. And rather than try to conjure up some priority about what we should read, if we just continually read Srila Prabhupada's books from beginning to end throughout our life, simultaneously, every day reading the Bhagavad Gita, every day reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, just going through it. We're going through it in class, but we can also go through it in our own private reading. And we can go through the nature of devotion also, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita in this way. And we'll be amazed at how much knowledge is there and how fresh it is. And many of the leading devotees in ISKCON, very advanced senior devotees, they have this practice of continuously reading Srila Prabhupada's books, both in their private study and also in association with other devotees. I was thinking that just as we were hearing how Srila Prabhupada's desire to have the Chaitanya Charitamrita printed in 2 months was fulfilled, even though it initially appeared impossible, but also by Srila Prabhupada's desire, this amazing edition of Srimad Bhagavatam became available, and now it's available online, and it's available on many different YouTube channels and different websites. There's one website called Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, actually, which has articles every month about the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada's desires are being expanded, just as the original Bhagavatam was spoken by Lord Brahma, by Krishna to Lord Brahma, and then expanded. And it's described that the demigods, they have their expansion of the Bhagavatam, which actually includes millions of verses. And of course, the demigods, they can read 24 hours a day because they're not obliged to sleep. There are other devotees who, Maharaj Parikshit also heard the Bhagavatam 24 hours a day. So if we're determined to execute this instruction of Srila Prabhupada, and if we really aspire to be able to do so, then Krishna can create can put us in a situation where it's actually possible that we can take birth in the pastimes of Krishna, and we can take birth in the pastime of other pure devotees where this kind of activity is taking place. Not that we need to focus on that desire alone, but that desire will become manifest when we are reading continuously. The way the heart becomes purified. So Srila Prabhupada says, the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees are recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam, so that those who recite these pastimes and listen to them will become purified. And by becoming purified, there will arise a desire to hear more and more. And Krishna in the heart will facilitate that hearing by giving us the proper means and association to be able to hear 24 hours daily. And that, as we know, Srila Prabhupada wasn't reading Srimad Bhagavatam 24 hours daily. He was constantly traveling, arranging temple building, arranging book publication. But he's described by his devotees as the living Bhagavatam. So he was living, breathing, walking, eating Srimad Bhagavatam. And we can also come to that platform by the process of hearing. Actually, I was just thinking that yesterday I wasted 2 hours in the kitchen. For some reason, I didn't put on Srila Prabhupada. I don't know. I generally do it whenever I'm in the kitchen. I put on Srila Prabhupada's giving lecture, and for some reason, I didn't do it yesterday. But I remember some time ago trying to learn. This is a lifetime activity for me, trying to learn the Brahma Samhita verses. Because there's many recordings of Srila Prabhupada also reciting Brahma Samhita, singing Brahma Samhita. There's about 20 recordings of Srila Prabhupada singing Brahma Samhita. Sometimes with the translations, not always, but sometimes with the translations. So for about 2 or 3 months, I was just listening to that every day for 2 or 3 hours in the kitchen. And I found that when I came in to the temple room and during the greeting of the deities, when it was Venam Kwanvantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham and Anganiyasya Shikalendriya Vritimanti, then I actually had a very for the first time probably in my life actually, then when I came before the deities, I was actually seeing them as Govinda and chanting for their pleasure. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So that was just by hearing Srila Prabhupada chant the Brahma Samhita that it actually connected me to the deities. It connected me to the process. So Srila Prabhupada was never disconnected. Srila Prabhupada was always completely connected to every aspect of Krishna consciousness. Every aspect of management, deity worship, instructing the devotees, writing his books, and also chastising the devotees. Every aspect of his life was suffused with the topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I had a little glimpse of how that could be possible for myself and how it would remove unnecessary anxiety about the anxiety of never being attracted by devotional service, always remaining on the Vaidhi platform, it always been a great effort to perform regulative devotional service. So I had a little taste there of like a higher platform, not that I was on it for the rest of the day, but at least coming in front of the deities. And Srila Prabhupada has actually arranged the morning program and arranged all of the activities in the temple so that we can constantly be thinking of Krishna, but it won't happen if we're not nourished by attentively hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. And if Srila Prabhupada's senior disciples and managers of ISKCON feel the need to read 2 or 3 hours every day to maintain their Krishna consciousness while they're dealing with like managerial affairs, then certainly we also need to really hear and read more and more. And this is the remedy. And we won't really have the faith until we do it. So I know our brahmachari leader, Raghunath Bhattaprabhu, is trying to make arrangements whereby we can have more sanghas of hearing and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's do it. Let's, as Srila Prabhupada says here, as a matter of principle. So this means not a matter of it's not a detail, it's a principle. Devotees should read, speak, and hear Srimad Bhagavatam persistently, 24 hours daily if possible, persistently. So we can persist if someone's not in, just like my wife actually suggested, that we should always carry Bhagavad Gita with us. And whenever we meet a devotee, we should just start talking about Bhagavad Gita. So we should be persistent. If the devotee says, "Oh, I'm too busy, I can't," okay, well, at least we are speaking. They may not be listening, but at least we are speaking, and we are hearing as well. We're speaking, and we're hearing. Srila Prabhupada said, even if there's no one to listen, the 4 walls will hear. I don't know if anyone knows what that means. Does anyone have any suggestions? What does that mean? That the 4 walls will hear? Well, actually, one thing is that it's mentioned many times in the Vedic literature that there's 10 directions. Gandhaki Prabhu's a Pujari, so he probably knows the names and the demigods that preside over all of the 10 directions. But there are demigods who preside over the 10 directions. So, are the demigods presiding over the 4 walls? Well, anyway, we've got paintings on the walls, and the paintings are windows into the spiritual world. And the demigods definitely have the capability of coming to hear Bhagavatam. Now it's actually is being spoken in ISKCON. ISKCON's our family, so our family of ISKCON throughout the world. Bhagavatam is being spoken 24 hours daily, because somewhere in the world Bhagavatam will be spoken. In Australia, it's now 8:10 in the evening, and in Hawaii, it's kind of like 10:30, and anyway, and then in, in Los Angeles, and then New York, and then so all over the world the Bhagavatam is being spoken, and in this way Srila Prabhupada's desire is being fulfilled. But we shouldn't use that as an excuse for not also endeavoring to be Kirtaniya Siddhahari. Shriya had the good fortune of being Sankirtan partner of His Grace Chaitanya Vallabha Prabhu for a couple of years. And he often quoted in class and also on Sankirtan that Srila Prabhupada once said that because we're coming from non-Vaishnav backgrounds, then we may, well, not just speak, but anyway, that we may commit offenses while chanting, and that actually one way to rectify ourselves from committing offenses while chanting is to constantly, perpetually chant the holy name. So Chaitanya Vallabha Prabhu, he actually put that into practice amazingly. Like, and on the Sankirtan, he was constantly chanting, literally constantly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra between every person for like all day long. And I've actually also managed it for a couple of days. Once I was being filmed by some students, some media students in Glasgow, and they gave me one of these little microphones, which I pinned on my lapel. And they were filming me with like big video cameras right next to me, sometimes right next to me, and other times they were up in a building somewhere else. So they were filming me constantly for about 4 or 5 hours for 2 or 3 days. And so I just couldn't, I had to keep really positive the whole time. I couldn't space out for a second. And on one occasion, when it was particularly difficult, I don't remember why, but it was just very few people were stopping, and it was lunchtime actually, and right in the centre of Glasgow, particularly difficult place to stop people at lunchtime. And so I just started chanting. I started chanting in between everyone, and once I started, I thought I have to keep this up, otherwise it'll just seem like it's like, I have to keep this up. I have to like represent that ISKCON devotees can actually chant continuously, and I kept it up, and for a couple of hours actually, and afterwards the students came back to me and they said it was really, really good. They said, especially when you were just chanting the whole time. So that was very. I thought that was a good lesson. That even though these people were quite materialistic actually, and we never really found out what happened to all of that footage. But anyway, they got purified, and they came to the temple several times, 3 or 4 times, to film at the temple as well. And but the fact was that because they had to listen, because they were listening and watching continuously, then they were affected by the chanting. So definitely we will also be affected by that continuous chanting. And and it's very difficult actually. It's very difficult to chant all the time while we're doing our service. We were listening to Satchidananda Swami on one of the Govardhan retreat days last week. Satchidananda Swami recommended, while we do our service, that we sing songs glorifying Krishna. So that's sometimes a little easier than chanting the Maha Mantra. So we can try and find some songs that we can sing during our service. Songs that list Krishna's names are nice ones, like Yashamati Nandana, or like Vibhaviri Shesha, these songs that list Krishna's names. And the mind kind of likes to be given new things to learn. So it is actually helpful. Although learning shlokas is not the goal, but learning shlokas, because it's actually an intellectual activity that engages the voice, the mind, and the intelligence, and because those shlokas are also Krishna Katha, then this is also something that Srila Prabhupada recommended. And he spent many, many hours editing the Srimad Bhagavatam with all of the Sanskrit. So, so let's try and do it. Let's try and learn, the Brahma Samhita prayers. So at least one devotee at the temple can recite them all. And, let's try and learn. If we've already learned half of chapter 9 or something, see if we can learn the rest of chapter 9. There'll be no loss if we don't succeed, but just the endeavor in itself will be purifying. And then we can pass that on to the next generation, and they can start much younger than us. There's children in our yatra. Adi Kavi's son, who's now when he was only 4 years old, he could recite the whole of chapter 15 perfectly, and the English, and he knew the English translation as well. So it's it's very powerful. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions or comments? Corrections?
Do you have any advice how to increase the reading without getting distracted by internet, like social media? Because I think this is a big stumbling block. Our reading and hearing about Krishna, the distraction of internet. Do you have any advice how to focus more on reading and not on other things?
I don't have any advice personally because I'm not succeeding myself. But Raghunath Prabhu, he's trying to, he has at least twice a week. He has Bhagavatam readings in the Brahmachari ashram, to which everyone can come. I think you really need to decide whether you want to do it online or whether you want to do it in person. And then, I think, anyway, I don't have the answer to that question, as I say. But there's actually some really powerful YouTube videos. There's a series of them actually recently came out, just within the last year. Maybe there's about 10 videos by senior devotees in ISKCON who've been asked to speak about the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And especially one by Prahlad Nanda Maharaj. Just to pin it down to one, I would recommend you listen to that. Prahlad Nanda Maharaj has actually got a photographic memory, and he's memorized the whole Krishna book, and still he reads more than 2 hours every day. And just by hearing that and listen, I'm going to listen to it again. And Raghunath's been encouraging me to help devotees read more. And basically I feel that it can only happen when, as a yatra, we actually all start to get together and really try to work out how we're going to maximize our time and help each other, how we're going to really help each other study. I feel it has to be done amongst ourselves first, and then we can expand to the wider community. So thank you. Well, we can speak after the class. Vrinda's got a suggestion.
Well, if to find a reading partner, someone you can call up and they don't mind you calling up at any time to see if they've got 10 minutes even. Like I've done that with a girl that used to be here, well, she's staying Abby, and we've done it at least once now, just over the phone. So she's at home and she's got spare time, so then I can go time to like that. So if you've got someone like, or maybe two people that you can bring up, if you've got any time, just increase the probability and have something set that you're going to read, so you don't spend 10 minutes just deciding, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe one you go through the Bhagavatam on just a particular subject, or just random, just something you're thinking about, a certain thing, aspect of Krishna consciousness of Krishna, and then just focusing on that. And then it becomes quite enlightening. Not that I do it very often, but she's just one person who was just, I never asked her, she's always, you know, she never said no, unless, you know, because we're working together as well. I find it difficult to get my husband to do the services and stuff. But, yeah.
But I know I could actually do much more service, like properly and attentively, if I was actually reading. So I'm going to take this seriously now. You know, before I joined before I joined ISKCON, once I read for 3 days in a row, and it wasn't Bhagavatam. I was reading. It was before I came across, but I was just trying to understand the nature of the mind. You know, I was just like reading books on philosophy. I used to go into the university. I wasn't at university, but I used to sneak into the university library and read all the books on philosophy there. And I stayed up for 3 days, just and like taking notes on books to really try to understand, like, you know, what the nature of consciousness. Actually, that's what I was trying to understand. And there are many parts of Bhagavatam that I don't understand. And I know that if I wasn't living in the temple, I'd still be up all night reading these books. You know, and I'd be able to stay awake as well, because I was really trying to understand. And anyway, please help me. Thank you much for coming, Gandaki Prabhu. So let's help each other. Let's help each other. Yeah, I'll be your reading partner. All right, my wife, no.
No, there's a comment.
Okay, there's a comment.
Hare Krishna and Hare Padma Lochan, he says, wonderful class, Prabhu, thank you very much. And Laura, she's inspired. I'm so grateful for reading with devotees, both planned and unexpected calls. It makes such a difference to read with others. Mother Brenda, I would love to read with you sometime if your time allows. So I've got another reading partner. Yes, Laura. We'll give you a call later.
Great. Thank you very much, Laura. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for helping us break the ice. It's like there's a lot of ice around at the moment. And the worst, it's easier to break the ice on the road than it's to break our reluctance to read together. And quite often I don't phone devotees because I feel guilty that I can't really offer them anything. And that's true. But what we can do is we can offer Srimad Bhagavatam to each other. So yeah, we should never feel that we're less qualified than another devotee. We can always just call someone and say, please, can I read with you? And that's, actually my friend, my buddy and mentor at Oxygen Krishna has invited me round for some reading this evening. So it's, I think today is a great day for breaking the ice. Yeah. Okay. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Vaishnav Sangha Vaishnav Seva ki, Nitai Gaura Pramanandi. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Namam Vishmara Christmas Tabares Mahati Bhakti Vedanta Swami University Saraswati Devi Gaura Vrinda Chanana Vishishna Vare Krishna Prabhupada.
Does anyone finds a relationship to some degree?
Yeah.
Even if you're behind or
Yesterday I was thinking the same to play a guitar. Because sometimes we meet with devotees and we just blah blah blah. And we don't talk about Krishna. I mean, it's not directly related, but it would be nice, like it's a good idea to carry a book. I say, okay, first we read 5 minutes, Bhagavad Gita, whatever, 10 minutes.
yeah.
And then we talk about other things if we need to talk. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just time pass and nothing, no Krishna Katha.
Yeah.
And it's a waste.
Yeah.
It's a waste of association.
It's just like time stands still when you know.
Yeah.
When, otherwise, it's set to the sun every day.
Yeah. But internet is a big. Every day I'm getting angry and thinking, oh, I didn't have enough time today because you get distracted, by YouTube and Facebook and all this.
Yeah.
We need
Although
like
there is some Krishna Katha in there as well, but we should also read this and
Yeah.
practically take a book and read.
just like in the Vedic yagis, since you're a yogic Brahmin, then they would have a referee, wouldn't they, to test the mantras. So you can be the referee to like tell us off for Gramya Katha. You can. You can. No, but you don't need to like. We're asking you to do it. Yeah, I mean it's great actually.
I think we can all learn from each other.
What Prabhupada says, we should know the philosophy from all angles of vision. We've only got our own angle.
Yeah.
That's why we need to, he said to do it association, so we have other angles of vision.
Yeah.
And then there's appreciation for that devotee and their understanding. We get to know their heart and their outlook, and as a, see them more as a devotee rather than just someone we say hi hello to. That's what the Christians, you see the Christians, they really go, like, I don't know about nowadays, but it's said how Christians know the Bible like the back of their hand.
What's carrying the Bible?
Yeah. I mean, we were saying, there's Christians, but they're trying to make us Christians, trying to show us the example we're meant to follow,
Yeah, he mentioned my Guru Maharaj Pralananda Swami. I was traveling with him in Belgium.
Is your Guru Maharaj?
Yeah.
Pralananda?
Yeah. I was first initiated by Hari Krish.
Oh.
I took the initiation.
Yeah.
But I was traveling with him in Belgium, and he doesn't waste a single minute. He's always reading. We were traveling in the car with him, and he sit on the car and open the book and start reading, not talking, nothing. And every minute I see he's free, reading.
Yeah.
And it was so inspiring for me to see this.
Yeah.
And when I met him a few times in Soho, he said, okay, come, let's go to the library. And he started reading Krishna book. That's it, not talking, nothing. How are you? That's it, a few minutes, and then rest of the time just reading Krishna book.
Yeah.
And it's nice, it's inspiring.
It's actually more, it binds the relationship more.
Yeah.
It's a more connection
Yeah.
with the devotee, because
Yeah.
you would, like, you may not normally associate with them in a particular, in general.
Yeah.
They're not maybe one of your close friends or things like that. But when you can put Bhagavatam or Prabhupada's books in the center, then you feel you've got a close friend on that level,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'd forgotten that Pralananda Maharaj was your Guru Maharaj as well now. So there's Christians. Would you like the garland program?
Yes.
You like the garlands?
I know someone who is very eager to the garland. You want the garland?
Oh, she likes garlands.
Yes, she loves garlands.
She looks so kind of chuffed. She knows the Bible.
You turn this off, isn't
So, it says end bread. Click on end bread broadcast.
Yeah.
Oh.